So this is Monday the 13th of August 2018 and I'm meeting this afternoon with Aung Tun Thet in the Pan-Pacific in Yangon, looking out from the window, a very rainy afternoon. So thank you so much for your time, because I know you are an extremely busy man.
Thank you.
So would you mind just talking a little bit about your life?
Thank you very much. I suppose I start at the beginning.
Please.
And I was just, my parents, in fact my father was in the army. He was part of the first group of what is then now known as PIA, Burma Independence Army. So when the General Aung San and the 30 comrades entered Myanmar, together with the Japanese forces, the first town that they crossed from Thailand was Dawei, which is in Thai, in the southern part. And at that time he has graduated from high school, so then he became one of the first members of the what they call PIA, Burma Independence Army. And then of course he continued in the army. So I was born in Bago, and which is very close to Yangon. And then
in what year were you born?
45, yeah. And then my recollection, I don't have much recollection of that time, but later he was posted in Yangon as the first military secretary. So I grew up in Yangon, literally, although I was born in Bago. I'm a Rangonite.
What's the role of a secretary of the army?
The secretary of the army was, it was in other countries called appointment general, the person who deals with the administrative part, because that was just after the independence. The Myanmar, what then called the Burmese armies, were reconstructed, and he was appointed as the first military secretary.
That's a senior rank, isn't it?
It was, yeah. And I think those days he was a major, because I think that time they had only lieutenant general, and so it was quite high.
Yes.
But of course he was, his career was quite distinguished during the War of Independence, and with the Japanese, and against the British, and then against the Japanese. So it was, anyway, I grew up in Yangon, but my first recollection with education was at that time the so-called elites in Myanmar attended what is called the Lady Porton. The word lady is important because I didn't realize that, but the British gentlewoman set up what is...
Oh, so she was a knight of the realm, as it were. Was a lady.
Her husband.
Husband was a
yes,
knight. Okay.
And her husband was the famous Porton. He's in Rakhine. He was a prime minister before the war. So he married a British lady, and Lady Porton set up the first, I think, very well-known primary school. So this is where most of the elite children went. So, but then again, this is based on hindsight. At that time, before the war and after the war, in Myanmar education system, we had a very well-established missionary schools. So after Lady Porton primary school, all of us went to Methodist English High School. So what is called the MEHS, which is right next in front of the British Embassy. And
you didn't get a nickname like everybody?
I did. So I was asked, the principal, who has passed away, a Scottish lady, Mrs. Logie. So when my father enrolled me into the school, first thing, yes, your child must have an English name. So I was given Alan.
Alan?
Yes, so this is, and all my siblings there were 7 of us. So all of us went to Methodist English High School, and my 8th standard classmate is now Daw San Suu Kyi. So we were together at school. So many of us,
What was her nickname? What was her?
She didn't. She because she had very unique Aung San Suu Kyi.
Right.
So by definition,
Yeah.
she already had. So she didn't change. She didn't have a sort of a Christian name.
Yeah.
Because all of us went. But one thing that I remember on reflection, I think whatever has happened to me, I owe a lot to that school. Because the school itself, although I didn't realize when my mother and father decided to send me to that school, that it was a missionary school. And we had to go to church because there was a church right next to the school. Every Wednesday we had church services. We had nativity plays during Christmas and during Easter. All of us participated, and my parents never had any reservations because the teachers themselves were not interested to convert us. All we were interested and they were interested was to get the best education possible. And I think I owe everything to the school.
What language were you taught in?
That time, if you speak in Burma language, you are fined, 1 pence at that time. So we were forced to speak in English. So although all the languages, all the subjects were taught in English except Burmese. So we had a Myanmar teacher, but all of us. So what we end up with was because of the high standard of quality of education we received. By the time we entered university, it was so easy for us. For the first 2 years in the intermediate years, we had no difficulty because the quality of education we received at the Methodist English High School. And another thing is this networking. Nowadays we call it networking, which we didn't realize, that all of us who went to school together, and most have, at those days there were many siblings. So when we grew up, we had a huge network, so we know one another quite well. And very interesting, again, after reflection now, although at that time we had national schools, this is run by the Ministry of Education, all my classmates were either sons and daughters of ministers who should have sent their children to the state schools, but they didn't. They sent to Methodist or other missionary schools. Because at that time, I think in Yangon we had only 2 schools which were supposedly in competition. St. Paul's High School, which is attached to the St. Paul's Cathedral, and then Methodist English High School. Of course, there are other schools too. And throughout Myanmar, in Mandalay, we had very distinct St. Peter's, and in Maymyo, St. Albert's. So I think that was the legacy of the Brits, or the so-called the colonialists who established the missionary education.
Were they happy years at school? I mean, were they...
Very much. I think because it said, I still remember the motto, it's not for education but for life that we learn. So the question was, we had a very well-rounded, we had to play sports, and moral education was taught. In addition to going to church, we also have sort of Buddhist training, interfaith understanding.
Very advanced, actually.
Yeah,
if you think of even Western countries.
Yes, in those days. So I think it really gave me the foundation on which I could build upon. Then
just stopping
please.
Just 1 second there. So, is there an alumni or alumnus
Yes.
of, and is that useful in your day-to-day
Very
life?
much so, and we always, what we call MIOSA, this is the Old Student Association. It's now spread all over the world. We have annual events. Sometimes we do it in the States, I think we have never done it in Australia yet, but we do have
Right.
all over the world. So, and one thing that I remember is that we might not have been closed during the time at school, but when we grow up, if someone is from Methodist, this is it. We would always support one another.
Right.
And then my wife keeps reminding, because she's much younger than me, she said, I see your friends, you always, are very true to one another. These are the sort of, I think, the values that we were taught, not directly, but indirectly, that we have to help one another, and if someone is successful, we have to be, we have to treat this as a blessing, and we have to support whoever is successful. So in that sense, I think somehow the school has managed to make sure that we are not jealous of one another, and we are always willing to support one another. I don't know how they did it, but at least in my mind, it'll be always be there.
And is there a re-emergence of the people from, like during all the military years? I mean, was the network still relevant?
Yes, because all of us, I think, because of that foundation, in our own respective fields, we became, quite successful, and therefore, in this very late stage of our lives, we can rely on one another. We know that all of them, most of them have become professors or distinguished professionals.
But did many of your colleagues go into the military?
It was interesting because recently, in fact, a few days ago, one of my classmates passed away. Yesterday I was talking to someone that in my school, most of us ended up as economists, as physicians or engineers, and out of 80 of us, only 4 went into the Defense Services Academy, and I was just counting, and I think 4 of them, out of 4, 3 have passed away. So but not during military service, but very few of us.
Right.
Because at that time, if you are educated, you don't go into, because it was not. It's quite unusual for people to choose a military career.
Right.
It's more of a professional, because the foundation, the support we received from the school was just going to the professional.
Where did
siblings all passed through, but of course there was an interlude, because after attending Methodist for a couple of years, my father was posted at the military attaché in Bangkok. He was assigned not only to Bangkok but Jakarta, and at that time South Vietnam.
When would that have been?
That was in the early 50s. So we spent about 3-4 years in Bangkok.
All 7 of you, all 7 children.
Yeah, in the international school. So, but then after he came back, we came back too. So we entered into. So I matriculated from Methodist High School. So I don't have the whole, the complete 10 years, but so then I entered into university, and then.
Did you know what you wanted to do?
Well, in a way, I would say yes, because I thought, because many of us, sometimes I think I'm a sort of an outlier or a maverick, because many of us, after finishing high school, almost all of my classmates either became doctors or engineers.
No lawyers?
Very few lawyers. So I said I'll be different. So I chose to go into, I would say, social science, especially a Bachelor of Commerce. So at that time, the education system was still very much based on the Oxbridge model. So we had 2 years of intermediate, so which I went, and then I wanted to study, I would say, business studies, but at that time we call it commerce.
Yeah.
That was the old name,
Yeah.
commerce and administrative studies. So I ended up 4 years.
At the University of Rangoon.
That time, when I entered University of Rangoon, it was University of Rangoon still, but after my third year, the education system was reformed, so-called, and we ended up with this very strange blend of the so-called socialist education system. So then the universities were broken up into institutes. So Rangoon University, they had a faculty of social sciences, which then became Rangoon Institute of Economics. The faculty of engineering became Institute of what they call Rangoon Institute of Technology. The faculty of medicine became Institute of Medicine. So all these new institutions were established, I think in 64-5. So when I graduated not from Rangoon University, but from the so-called Institute of Economics, which then created a barrier for me, because after graduating, I entered the faculty of, became a teaching assistant, but in Myanmar we call it tutor. So I became a tutor. So I worked there for 5 years, and we applied for state scholarship, because at that time that was the only way to study abroad. Unlike today, everyone can go abroad if you have enough resources. But at that time, we had the Colombo Plan, which I think the Australian government and others have supported. And I was perhaps always blessing in disguise, because I think I applied for state scholarship in 1970, for 4 years after I entered service. But at that time, they were sending people to East Europe, because we want to have an education based on socialists. So they were sending people to Russia, Poland, Hungary, Czech.
Because the Colombo Plan didn't continue?
No, that Colombo Plan was not sort of utilized,
right,
because the socialist government felt that they would send.
Suspended.
So I tried, because I want to go abroad, I want to get further studies. So I didn't mind if I had to go to Poland. But then I was rejected. I was rejected for something personal. This is related to my father's uncle, my father's brother, my uncle, who happened to be the last chairman of the Burma Communist Party. So he was well known. He died in Beijing, but he was the leader of the Myanmar Burma Communist Party, the Ken Bat Teng Teng. He's quite famous. But interesting enough, my father had 12 siblings, and I think my father was number 9, and the uncle was number 8, or number 4, and my father was number 5. So he entered into politics. He was underground leader during the War of Independence, but he went underground in 1949. Then he became deputy chairman of the Burma Communist Party, and then he later became after the Burma Communist Party was destroyed or eradicated in Lower Burma. He became the chairman. Although we had no contact,
sure.
I've never seen him.
Yeah.
Because when he went underground, I was quite young. But yet, by blood relations matter. So I was not. Although my father was in the army.
And that didn't affect your father's career, or it might have, surely?
It did.
Yeah, it has
so
to.
He was affected too. But then, because of that, I didn't get the first attempt to go. But then I found out that the person that was successful had to go to Poland. So, and then the next year, they then decided they had a change of mind. They said we will start the Colombo Plan again. So, fortunately, at that time, my father spoke to General Ne Win, about the situation. And General Nguyen, I think, very kindly says, please stop all this, going after blood relations. So I was very fortunate, and I thank my father for intervening. So I ended up in England, and for 6 years.
Pity you didn't get an Australian one.
That time, yes, because it would have been wonderful to study in Australia. So I took one postgraduate diploma, and then because that is related to the change in education system, because they didn't recognize Institute of Economics as a university.
Yeah.
They didn't recognize the degree, so I had to do 1 extra year. So I
Annoying.
did, yeah, but it's okay. I acclimatized myself for a year. I got a postgraduate diploma, then I did my master's, and I did my PhD.
Where
At UMIS, the University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology. I was in management sciences.
And how was life for a young Burmese in Manchester in those years?
It was okay because I loved the academia.
Right.
So I
but
loved
the
my
people were
research.
friendly. There was no.
No, but that time, Manchester was very dirty. Not like today.
Yeah.
It was except for the football club, there was nothing. So, but and unlike today, when students here, the young people go abroad, they are able to come back. Even if you go to Australia, they can come back every year. In those days, not just because we don't have enough money, when the government sends you, you come back only after you get a degree. You cannot come back during the intervening years. So I was really isolated for 6 years. I was there, it's like sinking or swimming.
And do you have enough money from the stipend that you get?
Yeah, it for survival.
Survival.
But the issue was, I think I blame myself. When after 3 years of research, my professor said, "Okay, it's time for you. You've done enough work. Start writing your dissertation." But I was very, I would say, I wanted to do better. So may I say greedy. So I wrote up and I keep writing, and I couldn't stop myself. So it took another year. But what happened was, at that time, the government has this limitation of 5 years. So at the end of 5 years, you have to come back. I said no, because I haven't finished my doctorate. So I said, then he said, okay, then you don't get the scholarship anymore. I said, I don't care. I just want my degree. So I had to survive. So it was a struggle. The last year, and I had to survive. And
what did you do? What part-time work did you get?
I tried to, with all the savings that I had, but at that time also, the economic situation in Myanmar was very hard. So
yes.
I wanted to send money back. I tried. So it was touch and go. I barely survived. But then, because I was so greedy with my thesis.
So you didn't have to work?
I didn't. Wow. But then what happened was, I wrote up the thesis in 2 volumes. So by the time I finished, and the professor said, okay, let's find the external examiner. So the external examiner says, so he come. So I went up to Leeds University, and then I submitted the thesis. He said, oh, can you give me about 2 months to review this? Which gave me that time. I can work. But that was an interesting juxtaposition, because the only job I can get in Manchester was in the restaurant.
Yeah, of course.
Cleaning dishes and washing potatoes.
Yeah.
So this is why I never ate any potatoes anymore, because I had to wash endless potatoes. But the interesting thing is, for 4 years, you were, very cerebral. Yeah. And then you ended up doing something completely where you need no
menial.
Yeah. It was very interesting for me. That this two between the cerebral, thinking hyper.
It's different for Westerners, of course, because we're used to working.
Yes, yeah.
But when you're an Asian and you come from an environment where your family had servants in the home and stuff like that,
but it was, but I learned.
Yeah.
I said, okay, this is okay. And I had to interact with the people.
Yeah,
who
I'd
had
probably
no
say very
education.
beneficial, right?
Yeah, who had no education, because anyone working in the restaurant, you don't need even a high school diploma, and then to interact with them, it was interesting. It was different. But then I came back. But
when's that? When that?
78.
78.
So, but unfortunately, my father was very ill. I did not know because those days we don't have Facebook or Messenger. It was only Telegram.
Yeah.
So I wanted to stay to get my graduation ceremony.
Yes.
But my uncle says, please come back. Your father's ill. So I forget. I dropped everything. So I came back. So, but I was able to take care of him for about 3 months. He passed away. And then, so I had to take care of the family because I was the eldest.
Did any of your other siblings go away to study?
No, I was the only one.
Only one?
Yeah, only one. And my second, my younger brother, was supporting the family too. So I had a chance to come back, support. Then, again, because of the socialist government, I was able to do a lot of research. I was able to do a lot of... Those days we have, because it was a Soviet model, so we had what they call research congresses, where you have research papers. So it was good for me coming back, with newly minted PhD.
And where did you teach? Did you go back to university?
Yes, yeah, because my post was still, left vacant.
But it would have been back to a university by then, wouldn't it? By 78?
No, still institute.
Okay.
So institute. So I was there. I did my research. Then, because I studied many areas. So although basically I was in management sciences, my PhD was on health management. So I was doing a lot of research for WHO and Ministry of Health. So again, on hindsight, this was a blessing because as an economist, people don't know what I was doing in the Ministry of Health because all of them were doctors. And I also find that people in the institute didn't know what I was doing because I was doing health systems management. So, I was different in both areas. But I pursued, and so the WHO, World Health Organization, noticed me. So they asked me to come to New Delhi to do some work.
Well, you would have been one of the few PhD economists at that time in the country, I imagine.
No, I was the only one then, because very few of us got the chance, and very few of us came back. Although there were some who in other departments, Department of Chemistry, Physics, at that time.
Yeah, but economists.
No, no one.
Yeah, as you said, a lot of you didn't come back, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some never came back. Yeah. So then, this is why it's important too that the department I was working for was the Department of Commerce and Administrative Studies, and then the professor was the first graduate from Harvard Business School. So all his senior staff were all MBAs from the States.
Wow.
But which means that it was okay during the previous government. But when the socialist government came into power, this department was looked as traitors because all of them had American degrees. So, and the professor himself was a Christian, was a Shan. So that was the combination that socialist government didn't like. So he was not favored. So we went through this process, and then, but I think around, I still want to do. I didn't know that there was such thing as a postdoctoral. So I continued working, and then I heard of this Alexander von Humboldt, at that time it was West Germany, which is giving this postdoctoral fellow. We had to compete, and I think annually there were many applicants. They choose 200. Again, here in my life, I think always blessing in disguise. I want to do research on contemporary Myanmar. I want to, publish on what is happening. But the Ministry of Education says, no, you're not allowed to study contemporary, which then means I had to find a solution. And the solution was economic history. So I said, can I compete with a proposal on economic history? And they said, okay, because economic history is not our, not our business.
Yeah.
It's happened. So I was able to submit the proposal, and I was given this Alexander von Humboldt. And I spent almost 2-3 years in West Germany. And I published a book.
And what was it like there?
Germany, because then time, as a postdoctoral student, as everything is, you do whatever you want, And my professors, I wanted to learn German. He said, don't focus only on your research. So I spent 3-4 months in British Library. That was really very helpful.
In London?
In London.
Hey.
Because, the material that the British had accumulated it's like a treasure.
Yeah.
So I went through it because I was writing on Burmese entrepreneurship, because the colonial history of Myanmar, which is written by many distinguished historians, British historians, including Myanmar historians, they totally discount the role of the Burmese business people. They say it was only the Brits, the French, or the German, and then, like everywhere in East Africa, they have the 3-level strata of society: the Europeans, the Asians, and the natives. So we were considered as natives, and that in economic history, because records show that the period of highest economic growth in Myanmar was during the colonial times. And then this interests me because we became the rice basket of the Suez, in your book, of the Suez Canal, and then the Irrawaddy Delta was developed as the rice paddy fields, etc. So I dig through the material in British Library, and then you come back to our basic as an economist, Schumpeter's work on entrepreneurship, creative destruction. So then the whole issue of definition of entrepreneurship, I think the older scholars were using the traditional, definition of entrepreneurship. But then, of course, recent definition becomes arbitrage, that you can be an entrepreneur by being a middleman. Then when I dig the records in the British Library, the British did have records on Burmese business people who were playing that arbitrage role. So I wrote about this, and I also was interested in the parallels between the Kombao, the last dynasty of Myanmar, and the Meiji, because the Reformation was carried out in Japan, the same time what was carried out in Myanmar, in Mandalay. So Ken Mindo sent people to abroad to study, and he brought back new technology, science, etc. But what happened was, I was interested in the way the Japanese industry developed. The Zaibatsu, the biggest conglomerates, the Mitsubishi, all stemmed from the feudalism. Because again, the Meiji Reformation got rid of the shoguns and the samurais. So the samurai did not have any other way but to become into business. So I was trying to see if there's any parallel. And interesting enough, there were, which was never, noticed by anyone. That because of the challenges in Mandalay, many of them sort of migrated Lower Burma, because by that time Lower Burma was part of British Burma. Then they made fortunes. So we
rice
had milling and etc. Because one of the administrative reforms that Independent instituted was that they had this hereditary form of government whereby a person is designated a township or a village. You're not giving salaries, you're giving the town. You do, you can levy tax, whatever. But he decided to get rid of the system and put in salaried, administrators. That leads to a lot of discontent because they were very happy to tax, levy, like in the British, in the old 14th, 15th century. So they rebelled, and many of them sort of migrated to Lower Burma, and they became leading businessmen. So that these are one of the, and then there was another popular theory written by the British and by nationalist Burmese economists, what they call decapitation theory, that if Burmese try to be successful because of competition, Furnival, the famous G.S. Furnival, did try to justify that it is the law of the jungle, that you have to compete, and whether you are Burmese, Indian, it doesn't matter. If you're not successful, you'll be wiped out of business. But in the British Library, you can look at the directives and edicts by the colonialism, where they deliberately made sure that the Burmese innovations never succeed. One interesting observation was one of the Burmese inventors was doing the match, for cigarettes.
Safety
match.
The lighter.
The lighter, the cigarette lighters, very successful. But he was competing against the match, which is run by the huge Indian business community. So the British then had the new edict which banned the lighters at the expense. They say it's competition, but there was that sort of a legal, justification against lighters. So but we have to give the British the credit because the records were there.
Right.
It's only for you to dig it up. So I was able to do this, and I published the book in the University of Heidelberg in Germany.
In English, obviously.
In English, yes.
So that was your postdoctoral?
Postdoctoral. So then I came back.
When's this?
That was 88.
Oh.
Again, blessing in disguise, because if I had been here in 88, I'm sure I would be involved one way or the other.
You came back after the student riots?
Yes, just after. So when I was in Geneva, because I was doing after my book was being published or printed, I had three months. So I went to the WHO, asked me to join them as a consultant in Geneva. Then in 87, around that time, I first heard of Dawn San Suu Kyi. So when I saw her face,
you mean since you're at school?
Yeah, I couldn't recognize. She has changed so much. And then I knew things were very difficult. So by the time I came back, the coup had happened. It was curfew.
Yeah.
It was difficult.
And of course, a lot of the universities were shut down.
Which meant that I came back in 88, November. So this university was shut down. When the rector says, don't come to school, just stay at home. So it was very frustrating, having done the postdoctoral. Again, blessing in disguise. When I was doing my health system research, I was working very closely with the Director General, who then became one of the only civilian minister in at that time, what they call SLOC.
State Law and Order
State Regulation Committee. Yeah. He was among the 8. So
was he the Minister of Education?
Education and Health,
yeah.
Dr. P. Thing. So he was my elder. So he said, one day he came to my house, he said, university is closed, can you join me? He said, as what? He said, no, I'll set up a department for you. So he was very kind. I became a Director General of the at the Ministry of Health, Department of Health, Planning and Statistics.
Okay.
Because he knew that I was good at this,
yeah.
Because I was helping him in his research before. But one thing and then I met, he said, what would like to do at the Ministry of Health? I said a couple of things. He said, go ahead. I said I want to change the family planning program, because at that time, as you know, U Ne Win was against family planning, because he was, he talking about the Indians and the Chinese. So I said, no, quality of life is more important. So I managed to get this. So I managed to get through the so-called family planning program. We didn't call it family planning. So I used the word child spacing. So no one understand what I was talking about, but it's the same.
Yeah.
So I got through this. So I managed to do this. So the family planning or child spacing was important. But more importantly, I set up the National Health Committee, which was very important, because at that time there were only 8 cabinet ministers. But of course we have the Secretary 1, General Kenyot, Secretary 2, General Teu. So Secretary 1, General Kenyot, was the chair of the National Health Committee. I was the secretary. I could really move the whole Ministry of Health, because it was more of a ministerial coordination body.
You mean also because you had the military bought into what you were doing?
Yes, and all the generals, we had the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Industry. Therefore, anything related to health, because I remember we were trying to promote breastfeeding. That was important. But at the same time, we are importing milk powder. So I told the Ministry of Trade at that time, please, let's raise the taxation of milk powder, which he did through this committee. So many innovations that we did. But one thing that I had asked to get a promise, that I don't want to be in this job for long. Interesting, they said, we were not here for long too. So, because at that time the UN wanted me to join them. But one thing that happened before that was in '87, after I came back, after I came in '78, around '82, the UN in Bangkok asked me to join them. I was very happy because I was looking after my mother, so I wanted to get the UN job. But at the last moment, they turned down the application. The UN was willing to accept me, but the government says no, because of my relations with my uncle. Still. So that time, when I was asked to become Director General, the first thing I told them, look, please don't forget who my uncle is. He said, don't worry, we know who you are. So I got through it. So then in '92, in fact, I was given a job in New York in '91, but Minister Upeteng, he said, please don't go. He keeps postponing, and finally I had to go to the top and say, they are waiting for me. So when I left in '92, I ended up in UNICEF. So I was there for '92 to 2000 for 8 years plus. Then again, I was in Bangkok doing one seminar, and I did not know who that person was. So I was just doing whatever I tried to be. And he said, would like to join the staff college. I said, what staff college? He said, we're going to open a new staff college, UN, in Turin. So I said, because all my life I only want one thing, which is teaching and research. Yeah. So I just said, okay. So I ended up 8 years. So Turin, so I got to know the system, the UN system very well. So in UNICEF, I was working at headquarters, because we have in UN 3 levels: headquarters, regional, and country. That's across the board. Yeah. So I was able to work in New York headquarters, regional in Bangkok, and country office in Bangladesh. So, and then with the training, it helped me. So I came back in 2008. So I've been here 10 years now, almost 10 years.
Did you manage to get married in this time, or you never married, or?
Because I had to look after my mother. Yeah. It was never in my mind. Right. But then I was able to meet my present wife. She was much younger. I was doing one of the seminars she attended, so we met. So we married. I married very late, when I was almost 40, because I was the youngest Director General, and then when I married,
to work 24/7.
Yes. So I married, and then so I have a daughter, and she's just graduated 2 years ago. She's working in the States. So, but I think post-retirement, one thing
But you're not retired.
I've never retired. So, when people talk about retirement, it's a strange, because when I came back in 2008...
You're already over 60.
Yes, because the UN retirement is 62.
Okay,
so
that's exactly
62,
right.
Yeah. So then the UN here says, please join them. So I was the advisor to the resident coordinator. So I worked there. And then 2010, the new government asked me to work as an economic advisor. I was to Uday Singh.
Yeah, that's right, to the president.
Yeah. And then I was also part of the Parliament Special Commission. So I worked there, and I was also part of the Myanmar Investment Commission. So, but all the while I was still teaching. So for me, teaching is where my interest is and will always be. And
but that must have been a very stimulating time advising Tencent.
Yeah, the reforms,
yeah.
And there were many things, which, because of course I cannot take any credit because you are an advisor. You give advice whether they take it or not, but you do what you can. But
you must have seen some of your advice implemented.
Yes, very many, but I will not take credit because it's his decision. But then there was a lot of administrative reform that we were able to do. And of course, 2015, when the new government, then they said, please join and help with the Peace Commission. And earlier I was not sure because as an economist, how do I do the peace? But I always felt there's one thing that I think had helped was in my work with the UN. I was always trying to, as soon as I come back, I was working with the private sector. At the private sector, I do consultancy in the business community. So one thing I found that because of what had happened after 1990, we had a very sort of...
At SLOC.
After SLOC, the economy opened up, but it was opened up in a very different way.
Yeah.
It was not what you would understand as responsible business. Essentially, it was a rent-seeking economy.
Yeah.
Permissions, permits, favors, all this. So when I started work with the private sector, my major focus was responsible business. How do we promote responsible business? So I then brought in the UN Global Compact, which is the largest CSR movement in the world. So I invited Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General. So he came in 2012, 2014, 2016.
And met with Tencent, no doubt.
No, with Tencent and Daw San Suu Kyi too.
Okay.
Because because I've mobilized. I think I'm quite proud that we have the largest number of companies in ASEAN. We have about 300 now as members of the Global Compact. Even Indonesia is about 60.
Mm-hmm.
So we are far ahead on promoting business, responsible business. And then because Dosu says, come and work with me, of course, school chum. So I did something which was not done at the same time. They were focusing only on the political side, ignoring development. So I told that there is some connection, the nexus between politics and development. So he said, run with it. So I'm running this Business for Peace initiative, which is working with the ethnic organizations. It is not just how do we get peace dividend, not just on the political level,
Right.
but also on the development side. So that's what I'm doing. And then I'm trying to also encourage what we call responsible investment. So I'm working with the Australian Chamber, the British Chamber, because I know Australian companies, a very good example.
At the Australian Institute of Company Directors.
Yes,
I
and then-
shared that in Singapore.
Okay, because I was also developing this responsible corporate governance,
Yes.
good corporate governance. So I managed finally to set up the Myanmar Institute of Directors and working with IFC. So now we have a good body of how do we accredit.
So you also on the board of that?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I work with them. So this is where we are.
And so the Peace Commission, how much time does that take?
Well, it takes every
Every
24
day,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Because these are things that, but it's not that you have to go to work and work on peace. You think, yeah. So in a way, I wear many hats, but I try to juggle.
But that's your most sensitive one, isn't it? In terms, like, I know you're an economist and you're not a political person.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the one that people focus on.
Yeah. But then what happened was, in 2016, I was asked to join the commission of the crisis in Rakhine.
Okay.
So then I part of this. But last year, after the crisis in the northern Rakhine, I was asked to be the chief coordinator of the union enterprise. That was asked by Dosu herself. So I'm running this initiative to look at humanitarian resettlement and development in Rakhine. And recently, last 2 weeks ago, I was appointed as the member of the Independent Commission on Rakhine. So our work will start soon to look at how do we address. So that's will be sensitive.
Yeah.
So everything is sensitive. Yeah.
But I guess at your stage of your life and career, I mean, you can say what you think, right?
Yeah, that's a luxury you have now.
You don't have to be a politician. You're
No,
not a politician.
yeah,
So
I if they want, my honest opinion, I will give it without any hesitation.
And I imagine also, if you're not happy with what's happening, you would say, I'll
In a way, I really want to thank her because she gave me that that prerogative. So I'm fortunate, but because I think the reason is, this because in your history, I think we are now at the very delicate period where the very nascent democracy, which started in '88, but really come to fruition in 2015.
It's really not yet complete.
Yeah. So the question is, I do not want anything to hamper its development.
Meaning that's the bigger thing.
That's the bigger thing. So this is the reason I'm working.
Right.
Whatever legacy we leave behind, we must make sure that democracy is solidified, because it's still very fluid. So we want to make sure that everything we do, it's towards this, because I think we need a more strategic vision. I always think of 2030. I'm involved with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals movement. I'm working with the young civil society, because 2030 is a nice target, because I won't be there.
You could be. You could just make it.
Yeah, just make it. But anyway, that's important. If you're not around, what is the kind of future you want for your country? And for
Are you amazed with where you've ended up? Are you amazed when you think back when you're a little boy that, now you've got really a fascinating roles at the end of your career? I mean, many people here, when they get retired, that's it. There's finish.
Yeah, sometimes you talk about the school gatherings, we sometimes end up, being together. When I look at other people, they have no worries, they have no work, they just having time. It's a slight sense of envy. But I know if I am in that position, I wouldn't survive.
But do you have any hobbies?
Yes, presentation only. That's what I do. I do PowerPoint presentation every day. That's all I do. Because I have to think of what is the message I want to give to the students, because I do public seminars almost twice a month, Yangon, Mandalay, everywhere. So I do this. That's what we. And then one thing that I should have mentioned, I became a writer, and I published many books in Myanmar. I'm a columnist weekly in the daily newspaper. So every Monday.
I don't think you've got time for any traditional hobbies like golf.
Yeah, that's my hobby. My wife keeps saying, you have not, because I have no hobbies, but I write and I read. Reading is my hobby, and now thanks to the internet, I still learn a lot.
Do you sleep?
I do. I exercise.
Do you?
Yeah,
What do
I
you do?
sleep. I run.
Run still?
Yes, yeah, I run 6 miles every day.
Really?
Yes, I do. I love running. So I love running, and then. But one thing is that I can write anywhere, anytime. Whatever comes out of mind, just write down. If I'm watching TV, I'm writing. I'm
Really?
watching CNN.
Do you wake up and write things down, or
No. As I spending time with my wife, because
Right.
we are only two of us.
Yeah.
And we talk, but I still write. I can do that. So somehow, it's okay.
Ideas that come into your head.
Yes, and I want to share the thoughts, because at the moment, because of the social media, a lot of negative.
And a lot of fake news too.
Yes, so therefore, for them to get something different, I just share my thoughts, and they might not be correct, but my worry is that we need, and I rely on the young people, because
Right.
I interact with the young a lot, with my
Right.
students.
So
They're
you're
okay.
teaching still at
Yes.
University?
Yes, Yangon. I
Yeah.
teach we have 4 postgraduate programs.
Right.
The MBA,
Right.
the Public Administration MBA.
Yeah.
We have the Development Studies.
Yeah.
And then we have the Business and Banking and Finance.
And you don't teach in each of them?
I do. So, I because it's okay. In the morning it's 7 to 9, and in the evening it's 5:30 to
Oh,
7:30.
my
So
goodness.
it's okay.
One question I'd just be interested,
Please.
which has come to me from talking to all of the people I have, what is a Burman? Because what I've learnt is that virtually no one I've interviewed is actually pure Burmese.
Mm.
That they're either mixtures of Shan, Karen, Chinese. I mean, in your case, are you Burman, or do you know your heritage?
Again, before asking the question, I think the issue you mentioned is quite important. In a sense, I thank my marital status, because, again, I think probably due to my early years, we're very comfortable with different religion. That's one beauty of being at the medical school. So although we went to church every week, I had Christian friends, I had Muslim friends, we are okay. So I ended up marrying a Christian, and she's also Christian but also Karen. So the question is, I have a different worldview. I embrace diversity, so I have no qualms about someone's religion, ethnicity, or background. So when you talk about Burman, sometimes I get a little concerned. When you say
what is a Burman?
Yes, when you say Burman, it must be Burman Buddhist.
Yeah.
Can you not be a Burman Christian, or a Burman Muslim, or Burman Hindus? That kind of embracing
It's
diversity.
going more on the ethnicity rather
Yes.
than the religion.
So the issue of course, I'm half quarter Mon, because my grandmother was a Mon. My parents was from Dawei, so another
South.
ethnic south, and probably my great grandfather was probably of some Chinese It's all mixed.
But that's what I think people are forgetting,
Yes.
like that this is a melting pot country.
Exactly.
There is no pure anything.
Yes.
Everybody.
But if I may, the whole issue of in Rakhine and here in contemporary, I think you mentioned, I think the issue of plural society, that in Myanmar it's not a melting pot. It's a
You
plural,
don't think so?
No, it's a plural society where we interact in the marketplace, we interact in schools, but then we go back to our own, in Yangon, for example, here, in Mago, at the end of the day, Bojok market, the Burmese will go to the Burmese quarters, the Indians will go to the Chinatown, etc. So Furnival, coined this word during colonial period of Burma being a plural society. That is still very true. It doesn't mean that we are fighting one another, but we coexist, but we live our separate lives. So there is very little intermarriages.
Really?
Yes. You don't find because the socialization is there. So this is something rather different. My personal observation that you do have a plural society, which means. But if I may, because I go around.
Yes, you do.
I was recently in Europe explaining the Rakhine, because there's, as you know, a lot of negative thoughts.
Yeah.
But I started my presentation with a first slide. I'm sure you're familiar with this. If you stand in front of the Central Fire Station in Yangon, in front of Shangri-La Hotel, in the middle you see Suli Pagoda, and on the right you see the mosque,
Yes.
and on the left you see
Church.
Emmanuel Church.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that all of have this worshiping the same thing. We live separate lives, but we coexist. Probably that's something that I think is doable. That we should maintain this. That it is okay to be different, but my worry is with the fake news, hate speech. Sometimes this is lost.
That's one reason why I don't. Some people used to say to me, "Oh, the country will go back to being called Burma again."
No.
I think it.
No.
I think
No.
Myanmar is a better.
Because the question is, I'm sure because you studied Myanmar, in a way, we have always maintained Myanmar as a collective noun,
Correct.
and Burma for Burmans.
Correct.
So it was the British who mixed it up, and we're paying the price for it. I don't blame them,
No.
but it's easier for them to have this. But the issue of Burma for Burmans,
Yeah.
so in this day and age, I think we have
No,
one unity.
past that.
Yeah, we have gone beyond that.
Aung Tun Thet, thank you so much.
Thank you
for
so
your
much.
for your time.
Thank you.
We could
President.
talk for hours.
I know.
And I know you asked to meet earlier today because you've got to get to yet another
yes,
meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.